often do you really trust your gut? You know, that immediate feeling that just knows. And maybe more importantly, how often is it actually right? Because today we're not just like dipping a toe in, we're doing a full deep dive into Daniel Kahneman's big book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And this isn't just a book, really. It's more like a master key, maybe, to the hidden parts of our own minds. It's like taking a flashlight into that, well, wonderfully messy, often illogical basement where our decisions really get made. So our mission here is to pull out the most potent insights, the really surprising facts, and yeah, maybe some of those uncomfortable truths that make you rethink how you go about your day. We're going to try and unpack why our minds work the way they do, and crucially, how understanding that can genuinely maybe change how you live.
Exactly. And at its core, the whole book and, our conversation today, it tackles this one fundamental, really perplexing question that Kahneman spent his life on, which is, why do people make irrational decisions, even when they honestly believe they're being logical? He spent decades just methodically taking apart that old assumption, the idea that humans are these rational agents, always weighing evidence, always choosing the best option. What he actually found was, well, it was far more complex and honestly far more human.
Okay, so let's start right there. With his foundational idea, it really sets up everything else. This concept of two distinct systems of thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah, he basically introduces us to these two, let's call them characters inside our own heads.
Yeah.
So first, there's system one. That's your fast, intuitive, emotional mind. It's effortless. It's automatic, almost reactive. Like, think of it as the default setting. It handles everything from recognizing your friend's face to knowing, 2 plus 2. And here's the real kicker. System one. It runs the show most of the time.
Okay, system one runs the show.
Then you've got system two. This one's your slow, deliberate, logical mind. It's effortful. It takes concentration, real mental energy. It's the part you use for complex math problems, or maybe really thinking through a difficult choice. Kahneman sometimes describes it almost like a tired supervisor. Only called in when system one is stuck, or maybe when the building's already on fire.
Yeah.
It really doesn't step in unless it absolutely has to.
So the really startling lesson here is that most of our decisions, day to day, they're actually made by system one, almost invisibly, unless we consciously force system two to get involved. And why is that? Well, because system two thinking is it's tiring. Our brain, it turns out, is a bit of a cognitive miser, always trying to save energy. It just defaults to the easiest path.
That's a great way to put it, a cognitive miser.
Like your phone wanting to stay on Wi-Fi.
Exactly. And because system one is so fast, it works through these connections, associations, metaphors, memories, feelings. It's constantly, effortlessly creating these coherent stories to explain your world, even when those stories are, well, completely wrong or incomplete or based on bad info. And this leads to a really crucial idea he talks about, cognitive ease. Basically, if something feels easy to process, if it's familiar, if it just flows smoothly, system one tends to think it's true. So familiarity breeds comfort, maybe, but not necessarily truth.
Right. Okay. And here's where it gets really fascinating, because Kahneman then just pulls back the curtain on all these incredible mental shortcuts and biases that our system one uses. He calls them evolutionary shortcuts, right? They maybe served us well once, but now in our complex modern world, they often just trip us up.
Oh, definitely. And one of the biggest ones, maybe the most impactful, is what you see is all there is. Kahneman calls it WYSID for short. And it just means we make decisions based only on the information that's immediately available to us, right there in front of our face. The unseen stuff, the missing context, totally irrelevant to system one. So like the example you gave earlier, someone cuts you off in traffic, system one instantly goes jerk.
Right. No other possibility.
Exactly. Without even considering they might be rushing to the hospital or, anything else. Or maybe you're interviewing someone and they have this really confident voice.
Yeah.
Your brain might just leap to, oh, they're competent, trustworthy, even though that's just a story system one cooked up based on like one piece of data.
Yeah. And that WYSID bias, wow, it's huge. It fuels overconfidence. It leads to terrible predictions. And it absolutely contributes to things like political polarization. I mean, think about it. If your brain always fills in the gaps with its own story, based only on what's right there, what happens when that story becomes the truth you defend? Even if you only have like half the facts, it's pretty humbling. You basically realize you almost never have the complete picture.
Precisely. And speaking of flawed predictions, another big one Kahneman highlights is the planning fallacy. We just consistently underestimate how long things will take, even if we've done really similar tasks before.
Oh, tell me about it.
It seems to be this systemic human failing, almost like an inherent optimism bias.
Yeah, that sounds painfully familiar. Anyone who's ever tried to estimate a project deadline, right? Or even just how long it takes to get ready in the morning. It's like we keep falling for it again and again.
And then there's the really powerful phenomenon of loss aversion. Kahneman showed through these careful experiments that losses hurt us about twice as much as equivalent gains feel good.
Twice as much. Wow.
Yeah, this basic asymmetry, it shapes so much of our behavior. It helps explain why people resist leaving bad jobs, maybe, or even bad relationships. The pain of losing what's known just feels stronger than the potential gain of something new. Or think about creative work. Why does one piece of criticism feel so much heavier, so much more impactful than like 10 compliments?
You're right. It sticks with you. And realizing that your fear of failure or just loss in general is biologically stronger than your desire for success. For me, that's incredibly liberating. It's not just you being weak or something. It's literally your wiring. And knowing that helps you maybe consciously choose differently to override that primal fear sometimes.
He also touches on a few others, common shortcuts, like the halo effect,
Yeah.
where one good trait about someone or something, it just clouds our judgment about everything else.
Ah, yeah. Like thinking someone charismatic must also be competent. Yep.
Exactly. Charisma equals competence. Then there's anchoring, where the very first number we hear, even if it's totally random, can completely skew our judgment afterwards. And availability bias, where memories that are more vivid or easier to recall make us think that kind of event is more likely to happen, even if statistically it's quite rare.
But what's really wild here, I think, is how System 1 uses this thing called substitution. So you're faced with a hard question, right? Something complex that needs System 2 effort. But your fast, intuitive mind just answers an easier question instead, without you even noticing.
Yeah, that's a key insight.
So instead of answering, say, is this actually true, System 1 might subtly swap it for, do I like this? Or does this feel familiar?
It's a profound little trick our own minds play on us. And that leads into another really perspective-shifting idea, the difference between the remembering self and the experiencing self.
Okay, explain that one.
Well, our experiencing self is the one living life moment to moment, feeling the joy, the pain, the boredom, whatever, as it actually happens. But our remembering self is the storyteller. It's the one that looks back later and constructs the narrative. And the really impactful idea here is that we don't choose between experiences themselves. We actually choose between memories of experiences.
Oh, interesting.
So this explains why, say, a fantastic 2-week vacation that had a really terrible last day can end up feeling like a bad vacation overall in your memory.
Right, even if 95% was amazing.
Exactly. Your remembering self gives huge weight to the ending and maybe peak moments, curating a story that often isn't the simple sum of all the moments lived.
Okay, so if our minds are constantly using these kind of sneaky shortcuts, what does that mean for some of our really deeply held beliefs about how we think? Because this is where Kahneman gets truly revolutionary, right? He starts systematically taking down these myths we've just accepted for centuries.
He really does. First and foremost, he just dismantles the myth that humans are mostly rational. Kahneman's truth, based on decades of evidence, is people are predictably irrational. He shows this brilliantly with the framing effect. The exact same person will choose completely different options depending on whether they're framed as gains or losses,
Whoa.
even if the underlying facts are identical.
So it's about the feeling, not the logic.
Exactly. Our response is emotional, tied to the frame, not purely logical.
And he also tackles myth number 2. Intuition is reliable. Always trust your gut. We hear that all the time.
All the time. But Kahneman's counter, only sometimes, and crucially, only with extensive training in very specific areas. He argues intuition works well in what he calls kind learning environments, places with regular, immediate, clear feedback, like chess, maybe, or certain aspects of firefighting.
Okay.
But in complex, unpredictable domains, like the stock market, or judging job applicants, or making big strategic decisions, intuition is often just a seductive trap. It feels right, but it's often wrong.
So not so reliable there.
Not without that specific trained experience. Then there's the big one, the myth that confidence equals competence. Kahneman showed confidence is often just a byproduct of coherence, not correctness. Experts can be wildly overconfident, even when they're demonstrably wrong, simply because the story they tell themselves or tell us is compelling and internally consistent, not necessarily because it matches reality.
Oof, that's a tough one to swallow because we really want to believe confident people, don't we? It feels reassuring.
We do. It's easier.
But Kahneman is saying that subjective feeling of confidence isn't a reliable sign of accuracy. It's more about how neat the story sounds in our head.
Precisely. It's about the coherence of the narrative system one constructed. So yeah, maybe be a bit wary of the loudest, most certain voice in the room.
Okay, what else?
Well, then there's myth number 4. More information always leads to better decisions. Counterintuitively, Kahneman's research suggests we often make worse decisions with more data.
Worse. How?
Because System 1, our fast thinking, just uses the extra data points to weave an even more coherent, seemingly convincing story. It doesn't necessarily weigh the facts better. More data can just mean more noise, more opportunity for System 1 to create a confident but ultimately incorrect narrative.
Wow. Okay, so less is sometimes more.
It can be. And finally, myth number 5, we know what makes us happy. Kahneman's truth here is subtle but profound. We often chase what we think will make us happy based on our remembered stories, not what actually does make our experiencing self happy moment to moment.
Ah, back to the remembering self versus the experiencing self.
Exactly. We optimize for the story of our life what we anticipate remembering fondly, sometimes at the expense of actual real-time joy or well-being. It's a fascinating disconnect.
It really is.
And maybe a quick bonus debunk Kahneman often implied, because I know about these biases, I'm safe from them.
Right, the I'm too smart for that fallacy.
Yeah. His painful truth. Knowing your biases doesn't make them magically disappear. Awareness is the first step, absolutely. But System 1 is incredibly persistent. To truly protect ourselves from these default shortcuts, we need to build structured systems, checklists, processes designed specifically to counteract them. We can't just rely on willpower.
That makes sense. So this book came out, what, over a decade ago now? Why does it feel like its relevance today isn't just intact, but maybe even more urgent, like it's on fire?
I think it's because Kahneman's core idea holds truer than ever. Our basic human mind or cognitive wiring, it just hasn't evolved nearly as fast as the world around us. We're still running on this, let's call it caveman software, these System 1 instincts, but we're trying to navigate this incredibly complex, hyper-connected, high-stakes digital jungle. And in this environment, our intuition is constantly being manipulated or just plain deceived.
Yeah, think about information overload alone. Kahneman warned against relying on snap judgments when slow, deliberate thinking is what's really needed. And social media, doom scrolling, viral misinformation, these are like System 1's ultimate playgrounds, right? We react instantly, emotionally, we share things before we even pause to reflect or check if they're true. System 2 doesn't get a look in.
That's spot on. And consider polarization, propaganda, and framing. Kahneman showed decades ago how framing choices completely controls behavior, often far more than the actual facts. Well, today, WYSIA and the availability bias are being actively weaponized every single day.
How so?
Think about elections or debates about public health like vaccines. Information is deliberately packaged and presented in ways designed to trigger those fast, emotional, System 1 responses, fear, anger, tribalism, rather than inviting a calm, logical System 2 analysis.
It's all about making the message feel easy, feel coherent, feel emotionally resonant.
Exactly. And what about that point on confidence being mistaken for competence?
Right.
Look at the explosion of social media influencers, talking heads, people positioning themselves as experts on everything. Often, the louder the voice, the more absolutely confident the delivery, the more we instinctively trust it, even when that confidence has zero connection to actual expertise or reality. System 1 loves certainty.
True?
And think about high-stress times, like during the recent pandemic or periods of economic uncertainty. What happens? Emotions tend to completely override logic. We saw panic buying, the rapid spread of conspiracy theories. Emotional reasoning just exploded. Kahneman's work feels like a constant, urgent reminder. Pause. Breathe. Engage System 2 when the stakes are high, because your System 1 is wired for panic and snap judgments in those moments.
And what about our collective inability to learn from the past? That planning fallacy we talked about, it seems like it's everywhere.
It really is.
You see it in climate inaction, maybe, where we constantly seem to underestimate the scale and speed of effort needed.
Bro.
Or in tech, with constant overreach and hype cycles. Or just countless startups with wildly optimistic timelines.
We keep betting on the best-case scenario, ignoring the historical data, ignoring the base rates.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Kahneman's legacy isn't just about pointing out all the ways we mess up. He genuinely hoped for a kind of culture shift. He hoped we could start designing systems in business, in government, in medicine that actively account for human bias. Things like better hiring processes that reduce subjective judgment, smarter public policies that gently nudge us towards better choices, safer medical diagnostic procedures that minimize cognitive shortcuts, more ethical financial models that acknowledge our predictable irrationality. That was the constructive goal.
It's really amazing work, and it's fascinating to get a little glimpse into the author himself, his background, and what really shaped this groundbreaking thinking. Where did it all start for him?
Well, you can't really talk about Kahneman without talking about his legendary partnership with Amos Tversky.
Mm.
They were incredibly close collaborators. Back in the 1970s, these two brilliant psychologists, they joined forces. They were driven by this shared sense of wonder, really. Why do people, even smart people, make such irrational decisions, even when the stakes are really high?
A shared puzzle.
Exactly. And together, they identified many of these key cognitive biases we've discussed: anchoring, availability, loss aversion. They systematically challenged the assumptions of classical economic theory, the rational actor model. And in doing so, they essentially gave birth to the entire field of behavioral economics. Kahneman often said something like, Amos and I shared the wonder of discovering just how blind people are to the workings of their own minds.
It wasn't just theory for him, right? He was obsessed with testing intuition with real experiments.
Oh, absolutely. His research was incredibly empirical, deeply experimental, meticulous. He didn't just speculate. He designed clever ways to demonstrate these biases in action. He came up with famous experiments like the Linda problem that one brilliantly exposed the conjunction fallacy, showing how easily our minds choose a plausible story over basic statistical probability.
The bank teller feminist example.
Exactly. And his loss aversion experiments vividly showed how people would consistently turn down bets that mathematically offered more potential gain than loss simply because the fear of losing felt stronger.
And it wasn't all lab work either.
No, not at all. His real-world experiences had a huge impact. For instance, early in his career, he was evaluating Israeli Air Force flight instructors. He noticed that when instructors praised pilots after a good maneuver, the pilots often did worse next time. And when they yelled at pilots after a bad maneuver, they often did better.
So the yelling worked.
Well, the instructors thought so. But Kahneman realized it was mostly just regression to the mean. Extreme performances tend to move back towards average. It wasn't the praise or blame causing it.
Yeah.
It was a huge aha moment for him, seeing these powerful statistical principles completely misinterpreted in real life due to cognitive bias. He also studied experts in fields like medicine and finance, finding again and again how even seasoned professionals were consistently swayed by irrelevant factors, showing how deep these biases run.
And his personal story, too. Born in Tel Aviv, grew up in Paris during the Nazi occupation, experiences with war and displacement. That must have shaped his perspective profoundly.
You have to imagine it did. That likely fueled his lifelong quest to understand irrationality, to understand human behavior that, on the surface, often seemed to make no logical sense at all. It probably gave him a very unique, perhaps more skeptical lens on human judgment.
Absolutely. So, as we kind of bring this deep dive towards a close, let's maybe crystallize some of the most, status quo-defying, really revolutionary ideas from thinking fast and slow. The things that genuinely flip common wisdom upside down.
Okay. Well, the first, and maybe the most fundamental, is simply this. The myth of the rational human is dead. Kahneman didn't just say we make mistakes sometimes. He fundamentally showed we're not basically logical creatures who occasionally slip up. It's more like we're fundamentally irrational creatures who only occasionally manage to reason well, usually with great effort. And that just profoundly challenges centuries of philosophy, economics, psychology.
Yeah.
So much thought built on the idea of human rationality.
Yeah, that's a big one. And linked to that, the idea that confidence does not equal accuracy. He really hammered this home. That subjective feeling of certainty you get. It's not, as he showed, a reasoned evaluation of how likely something is to be true. It's determined more by how coherent the story feels in your head, how easily System 1 processed it. And that demands real humility, right? And a healthy dose of skepticism towards anyone, including ourselves, who speaks with that unwavering certainty, especially those charismatic thought leaders.
Absolutely. Then there's the sheer power of loss aversion, that finding that losses loom larger than gains, maybe twice as large. That isn't just some interesting psychological quirk. It directly blows up core ideas in classical economics like utility theory. It forces economists, politicians, business leaders, everyone to rethink how they design incentives, how they frame choices, how people will actually react.
Yeah.
Because that fear of losing is just so much more motivating or demotivating than the prospect of an equivalent gain.
Right. And that brutal truth about the planning fallacy, that plans are mostly just best case scenarios dressed up in optimism.
Hmm.
It reframes failure, doesn't it? It's not necessarily about a lack of effort or intelligence. It's often just a systemic, built in flaw in how we humans forecast the future. We're wired for unrealistic optimism, often ignoring past data.
We really are. And finally, I think Kahneman's stance on intuition is just completely revolutionary. His core idea: intuition is nothing more and nothing less than recognition,
Recognition, meaning.
meaning it's pattern matching based on past experience. It only works reliably, he argued, when it's been trained in very specific environments, ones that are stable, predictable, and offer immediate, clear feedback. So it works in chess, perhaps, where the rules are fixed and you instantly see the results of a move.
Okay.
But does it work reliably in investing, in complex medical diagnoses, in hiring decisions? Kahneman would say rarely, because the feedback is often delayed, unclear, noisy, or the environment itself is constantly changing.
Hmm.
So this directly challenges every trust your gut guru out there. It demands we use intuition very selectively, almost like a specialized tool, and with extreme caution in domains where it hasn't been rigorously trained.
Wow. Okay. So we've walked through this incredible labyrinth of Kahneman's mind, right? Pulled back the curtain on how we actually think. And now, maybe at the heart of it all, are these 5 keys he seems to have been gently slipping into our hands throughout the book. And these aren't just ideas to make you sound smarter at parties. They're insights that, if you really take them on board, might actually make you, I don't know, kinder, clearer, maybe calmer in navigating this noisy, predictably irrational world.
Okay, number one, your mind has two systems, and system one is always jumping the gun. The key lesson: know when to pause. Fast feels right, often. But slow is often wiser. Deliberate thought matters.
Pause. Okay.
2. Biases aren't bugs. They're built-in features. You can't just wish them away or eliminate them through willpower. But you can, and you probably must, design your decision-making processes to account for them.
Yeah.
Build in checks and balances.
Design around them. Got it.
3. Confidence is seductive, but it's not reliable. Always distrust those easy, overly coherent narratives, especially your own, and constantly ask yourself that crucial question: what important information am I not seeing here? Seek out disconfirming evidence.
What am I missing? Good one.
4. We remember stories, not raw reality. This means you need to be conscious about curating the narrative of your life, not just chasing fleeting experiences, because ultimately what you remember becomes your truth and guides future choices. Think about the remembering self.
Curate the narrative. Okay.
And number 5, intuition isn't evil, but it needs a license to operate. Use your gut feelings primarily where they've been rigorously trained and proven effective through feedback. Elsewhere, slow down, ask probing questions, actively invite doubt and alternative perspectives.
Use intuition carefully. Okay,
Yeah.
those are 5 powerful takeaways. So if we had to boil this entire massive, brilliant book down into one single sharp sentence, maybe it would be something like this. Your brain is a storyteller, not a statistician. So please don't believe every tale it tells.
That's a great summary.
This deep dive, really, in its own gentle way, it asks you, the listener, a pretty profound question. Are you truly in control of your choices? Or are you mostly just flowing downstream, convincing yourself you're steering? And the beauty of Kahneman is that he answers not with cynicism or judgment, but with incredible clarity. He gives us this toolkit to see ourselves, our own minds, more clearly. And hopefully, with that clarity, choose just a little bit better. So maybe we encourage you to reflect. Where might System 1 be tricking you right now in your current projects or big decisions? And perhaps more importantly, where could you intentionally create those pauses, those little rituals that allow your slower, wiser, more deliberate System 2 to actually breathe again and have its say?